President Bola Tinubu said yesterday that his government was winning the war against corruption. He cited the strengthening of anti-corruption agencies and the political will to implement the ECOWAS protocol against corruption, amongst many other measures. He spoke at the 6th Annual General Assembly of the Network of Anti-Corruption Institutions in West Africa, that's NASIWA, and themed strengthening regional cooperation in the fight against corruption in Abuja. That was yesterday. Tinubu, who was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, stated that his government has worked diligently to ensure the independence and adequate funding of anti-corruption agencies, encouraging them to cooperate within the law. The president, who also recommended this template to other states in West Africa, said corruption remains one of the most significant obstacles to the progress and prosperity of our nations. It undermines the fabric of our societies, erodes public trust, and impedes the equitable distribution of resources. As leaders, we are responsible for confronting this challenge with unwavering resolve and concerted actions. Over the past year, we have worked hard to strengthen all the anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria by not interfering in their activities and ensuring that they are adequately funded. We have also encouraged them to operate within the law. All right, this was a statement of the president, and he also recommended this to other states in Africa. Yes, let's get your thoughts on the president's statement about winning the war against corruption in Nigeria. He already told us how.
Okay, what the vice president pointed out three things, and then described it as winning the war. One, he said funding the anti-graft agency very well, not interfering
in the activities.
And then also encouraging them to, you mentioned there's a third thing you read out and all that. So I don't know how this could equate to fighting corruption or winning the war against corruption. Okay, however, the vice president might have pointed out the best the government is doing towards fights against corruption.
What would be your definition of winning the war against corruption?
Because I'm taking from what the vice president has said. He said they are winning the war against corruption. And from what he said, how are they winning the war? They are funding the anti-graft agency very well. So ordinarily, if you're being funded, it means to whom much is given, much is expected. So if of course the anti-graft agency have not also come to say whether they are being funded or not. But if they say they funded them, that should be a morale boost. It means the anti-graft agency should know that, yeah, we are well funded, all the vehicles we need, they are available, all the allowances are paid, everything is paid. Of course, unfortunately, the anti-graft agency cannot reply a vice president. Then the second one is that they don't interfere. In that angle, we don't even know if that's also possible for them not to say we don't interfere. If the vice president is saying they don't interfere, there are so many persons. The president's cabinet has been accused of having corruption issues. So, except if you allow me to mention that some persons have been accused, some persons have had issues with EFCC, and then they were given appointment. So many, and all that. The ministers and all that in the past had issues. What happened to the matters? Even those at the National Assembly. So the issue of not interfering, I don't know the definition. I don't know how the vice president came up with that definition, that they're not interfering. And then, again, the EFCC cannot come out to answer the vice president. So in all of this, the vice president could not also point out that these are the corruption cases we've paraded. These are the monies recovered so far. These are issues. These are key political. These are VIPs we've gone after that took our money and then we've recovered it. So he was unable to point out, and then you're telling the West African countries to emulate. I don't know. Okay, then they thought
him mentioning a lot, because they might have had a lot of cases like that. So he's just telling us the ways in which they have. That's why I asked you earlier, if you don't see that probably the way you're seeing it, how do you think would be, what is your definition when you talk about winning, not just fighting now, winning the war against corruption?
Okay, under the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari, something happened. You know, when the man came in, he made a statement. He said, "I'm for nobody, I'm for everybody." And then that infused fear in the hearts of so many politicians. And at the time, you saw people returning money. That's what we call winning corruption. Winning. People were willingly returning money, and the EFCC were going after so many persons. Unfortunately, that didn't end well. They started well, but they didn't end well. They didn't end well in the sense that at the time, it became as if that government got loose, and then people went back to their share and said, no, actually nothing is happening. So that's part of a way to win corruption. Even at the time, the central bank governor, that administration through the central bank governor, came up with a policy where they said, everybody return your money, we wanted to change this. Those were strategies to recover funds. Because there were this allegation that funds were being hoarded. And the circulation was not much. So when you see practical ways of winning corruption, even we may say it didn't go to the extent at which we expected, but things were happening. These were being reported on air. But right now, what the vice president is now trying to say we're winning corruption is because have they not been funding the EFCC? Except he's saying this is the first time we're funding the EFCC, and you're describing this as a way of winning corruption. I think the vice president, the other things he should have said, maybe he didn't say.
Even the president, because the vice president was standing in for the president at that time.
Okay, I think the president, the other things one other things he mentioned is ECOWAS, following the ECOWAS, and I think the other thing you should have said, the other thing you should have pointed out, like telling us we've gone against this, we've recovered so and so amount of money, the money we recovered, we've put it into this and all that. Well,
I think EFCC would explain better if probably it was EFCC boss talking. He would be able to tell us how much they have recovered and what steps they have taken. But you would agree with me that the EFCC recently, especially recently, have been in the news so much for different activities that they've been carrying out in fight against corruption.
Some of the activities have just been on what's it called, the Nigerian issue where they target Yahoo. And that's most of the persons they've been parading. Can you imagine? Is there any VIP? These persons, the main persons who are carrying money, is there anyone? All the investigations they've been carrying, what's happening? People have been shouting. Is there anyone that have been paraded? There are so many persons that diverted palliatives. Where?
But have we heard any case where EFCC complained about not being properly funded?
They have not heard. And then the vice president
the vice president is obviously not out of place if he says that they're fighting or winning the war against corruption by funding the anti-graft agency.
If I also go back to your question, have there been any time EFCC cried that they've not been funded? Exactly. So how do you take this as a credit?
Don't you see that as a way of the government supporting the fight against corruption?
If it's true, it's a motivation. If it's true, well, of course, if EFCC cannot come and counter the president. So it is like releasing an arrow. It has gone forth. So for you to return it is hard. You just murmur with it. There is nothing else you can do. So, but it would be unfortunate if they are not being funded, properly funded. And then the president is saying that because indirectly they are making more money. They are even adding to the national income. So if the vice president, I don't even see any reason why the vice president should take that as a credit. Even if it's supposed to be. There are no times the EFCC has said you've not been funded. There are no times they've cried out of lack of fund.
So it's not out of place for him to say that.
Is that a credit? If it has been a routine, other government have been doing it, and then you're coming out to see it as a credit without telling us these are cases, the EFCC, these are funds, EFCC have been able to recover. No, none. The jump issue that happened, where they said something swallowed money. Where is it? We had forensic audits at the NDDC. Then recently we had the report is missing. What's the EFCC saying about it? We also had some top political officers. Why they were governors? They had EFCC cases. Immediately they left, the EFCC wrote to them. Some of them were declared wanted. What happened?
Talking about fight against corruption and funds, let's also get to look at other agencies. Let's look at the police now. How much are they funded? Because when we talk about fighting corruption, we're not just looking at the EFCC. We're not just talking about that. We're also looking at the police, because are they not part of the fight against corruption?
Yes.
So how much are they really funded in this fight that we are already winning?
When you talk about fighting corruption, most especially the EFCC, they have that key responsibility. The police has been, even if most persons from the police are now taking over to the EFCC on a special duty. Now, when you talk about crime fighting, the EFCC cannot come out and say, okay, all those corruption and other crime, they go in line. But the police most times have presented as if they concentrate more on fighting other crime, like terrorism, cultism, and all that. Why the EFCC is geared towards fund recovery.
All right.
Now, if all of them, but whatever it is, all hands must be on deck.
But back to the activities of the EFCC now. We had the new boss, and a lot of people have been stating, you know, the achievements ever since he came into that office and all of that. But let's get to look at your analysis of, aside the president saying what the federal government has done, let's look at the activities of the EFCC and how much you think they have achieved so far.
So far, they've been trying, but unfortunately, we've had the issue of those fighting corruption being accused of being corrupt, like what happened with the former EFCC boss. Even like the police, he also asked of. There was this police officer we all rated something good. All of a sudden, he was also rated to be involved in corruption. So if an EFCC boss is tagged to be corrupt, where are we? So recently, I also think when you're fighting corruption, there are ways corruption will fight back. Except I give it to New Yorubado, whom only he has fought corruption. He came up with this fight, and I was chasing everybody, almost everybody. And then there were no time they leaked, should I say, they attached corruption cases towards him. Then recently, we've now had EFCC personnel that have been tagged as being corrupt, and they are even showing you evidence. So that's one challenge the EFCC have had. And then the issue of appointing somebody because it's my uncle's brother is also another challenge the EFCC have had. Outside that, the tempo, the momentum in the EFCC has gone low. It's either the EFCC is working so hard they don't even want to make use of the media for us to know, or they are not just doing at all, so the media does not have anything to report. So that's the two ways I can.
All right.